Good morning to Honorable Council of Ministers. Good morning to the members of the media, the general public, those tuned in to St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, and our St. Martin Gov live broadcast on Facebook. My name is Rodney Richardson, and I am your host for today's live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. To begin today's press briefing, I would like to welcome to the lectern Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Leona Romeo Marlin.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. A pleasant good morning to everyone, Council of Ministers, invited press. Good morning. Today, I would like to introduce to the general public the new Council of Ministers, who will each give an introduction about their priorities of their respective ministries during the upcoming governing period. The new Council of Ministers are Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, Mr. Emil Lee; Minister of Finance, Mr. Michael Ferrier; Minister of Education, Youth, Culture and Sports, Ms. Urine Reuter; Minister of Justice and Acting Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication. I must state that his absence is due to a judicial meeting with all ministers of justice in the kingdom, so he's presently absent. And we have Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, Mr. Miklos Gitterson. Minister of General Affairs, of course, my person.
Thank you for those introductory remarks. I now would like to welcome to the lectern Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, the Honorable Emil Lee.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here again. Greetings to my fellow colleagues. We had one Council of Ministers meeting already, and I must say that I'm very optimistic about the conversation, the environment, the ambiance in the meeting. It felt very positive, very energetic. So welcome to all of you, your first press briefing. Happy New Year's. This is actually, I think, my first press conference since the New Year's. You know, since Hurricane Irma, we've been battling a number of storms. Irma did many things. It revealed weaknesses in our community, but it also brought people together. You know, I know personally speaking, you know, when my son didn't have internet for his tablet and there was no cable TV working, our family sat together and actually sat around the table and talked and had a good bonding moment. So there were good and bad things that came out of Irma, but certainly it has stressed our community, our country in many, many ways. Another storm we've been battling is since the vote of no confidence. There's been a political storm, and that's had many consequences for our country. You know, from the time that there was a vote of no confidence, I think there's some that anticipated the change in government, perhaps didn't drive projects forward the way that they need to, because in this environment, you know, time is not our friend. We need to have projects moving. We need to have them expedited and executed as quickly as possible, because every day is a day that the community suffers. And this, of course, comes at a time when our community, more than ever, needs stability, but such is life. This has been a difficult time as well personally. You know, these days, since the vote of no confidence, as the lone minister in the Council of Ministers that was anticipated to return, you can imagine that the atmosphere was not the most pleasant or conducive atmosphere. They've been, as a matter of fact, very challenging, very uncomfortable days. And you know, there's let's say a sort of a public secret that what always tends to happen after there's a change of government is the outgoing government has a tendency to make snap decisions and, in my opinion, to grant favors that they want to extend to their supporters. And I think this is, in my opinion, this is a process that needs to stop. We talk about continuity in government, we talk about the chain responsibilities, and I think that the guiding focus should be what's in the best interest of the country, and that alone. So, you know, these days since then, I've been in a hostile environment, in a tense environment, but always with the objective of defending the interests of country and defending the people of our country. And actually, there was a couple quotes or a couple speeches that I was listening to that helped me to sort of confirm or reaffirm what I was doing and what's right. One was actually Oprah Winfrey's speech in the Golden Globes, where she spoke about that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool that we all have. And the other actually was a conversation with a rabbi, and he was referring to a speech by Prime Minister Netanyahu. And he was talking about a time when he was serving in the UN, and actually he had advice from a rabbi saying that serving in a house of many lies, unfortunately politics can be like that, remember that even in the darkest place, the light of a single candle can be seen far and wide. So actually both people are talking about truth. And in my language, in political language, I think that refers then to transparency, open government, that the people have a right to know that the politicians are there to defend their interests, defend the country, and to be open about what's happening. It is my intention then, within the next few days, in conversations with the new members of the Council of Ministers, to discuss recent decisions from the previous government that I'm personally uncomfortable with and that I believe are not in the best interests of the country. And I believe that these are decisions that the Council of Ministers should examine and reevaluate as to whether they are really in the interests of the country. This practice of outgoing governments, in my opinion, needs to stop because it's not good for the people. A few things going forward, some basic information. I've gotten some inquiries. Regarding the basic necessity vouchers, 2,210 basic necessity vouchers have been filled out, and of those, 2,060 have already been picked up. And to my record, so far, we have 2 official dismissal requests at the ministry. In terms of projects going forward, there's a number of things that has our attention, our focus, for this very short governing period. You know, there's something that sometimes escapes people. The ministry, all the ministries, have staff, have resources, a budget that was designed for normal operations. So in other words, the operations for the Ministry of VSA was set for the year based on anticipated workload. What's happened after Irma? That workload has dramatically increased. The needs of the community have dramatically increased. I mean, we have social housing issues, we have people who need financial aid, medical aid, we have more labor disputes. So the workload for the ministry, and I'm sure this goes for every other ministry represented here, has increased dramatically. But instead, the resources, if anything, have reduced. I know for the Ministry of VSA, for example, we are struggling just with vehicles for inspectors to be able to go out and to do their job. Thankfully, in our conversations with Holland, we've received some new vehicles, and hopefully we'll receive more shortly. But it's a constant battle to get resources for the ministry to do its work. And so it's something that I'd like the community and everyone just to understand that, you know, the ministries are really stretched to their limit, and until we can get more resources, and I'm talking about human resources, financial resources, physical resources, have a little bit of patience, understand that everybody has their own personal issues at home, and we're all working with very stressed budgets and resources. The hospital project, as you know, this is a project that we've been working diligently on. Just prior to Irma, we were close to securing the funding for the hospital. As I mentioned earlier in my speech, one of the things Irma did is reveal weaknesses. It revealed that the plans that we had for the hospital, although they were up to Category 5 standards, the new standards of Category 5+, or maybe they'll even add Category 6 or 7 to the scale, But clearly, we needed to relook at what the design specifications were for the hospital. So the good news is this is always better to do it when it's on paper versus imagine if we had actually got further in the construction. So everyone agrees that the hospital's critical infrastructure, and after a storm, that infrastructure needs to be reliable. It needs to be standing after such a catastrophe. So we are looking at redoing the design specifications of the hospital to make it a poured-in-place or a concrete structure. We need to be sure that it can withstand whatever storms may be coming. That actually obviously has a financial consequence. Since Irma, we've been diligent, quietly, but diligently working with Holland. We've made requests to them in the past. It was for soft loans, and we are now asking them actually for a grant in order to upgrade the structure to make it hurricane resistant. We've done a number of reports, a number of letters. I believe the conversations are going very well. For me, it can't happen soon enough. You know, the construction period for the hospital is anticipated to be a couple of years at a minimum. If we change the structure, that time frame may extend. So it means the longer we take to actually begin the project, the more storms we will have to go through, or the more hurricane seasons we'll have to go through before the hospital is complete. I must say that the discussions have been very positive, and that all indications are that there will be support for the construction of a new hospital in a reinforced structure. But we're not waiting on that alone. I've been very proactive in terms of trying to secure additional financing for the project. I've made a trip to Curacao, spoken with a number of potential financiers there, and I believe those discussions are going very well. Some of the pension funds there are interested in investing in the project here. So fingers crossed, I hope within a very short period of time to have a confirmation on the funding for the hospital. Once we have that, the hospital project would be secured to move forward. Another project that the ministry is working on is a project called PEERS. It's talking about a personal incentive program. Basically, it's a cash transfer program where we're looking at ways for people who are unemployed to perform almost like an internship type services where they would learn skills and receive financial compensation for that. This is a way to help to inject money into the community for people who need it. Emergency housing, also obviously a clear need. We still have people, as you know, housed in the Carnival Village and Carnival season. I think the contract is up until about the end of February, so there is obviously a need to work on an alternate housing solution. We're working on a project that I think is very interesting. I'll give you an example. We're in conversation with one property. The property was actually not being used already prior to Irma. The property sustained some damages. We're in conversation with them about the possibility of us stepping in, financing the reconstruction of the property, taking that amount and using it and deducting rent against the amount that government would invest in the reconstruction of the project. So it would take a derelict project that is not operational with an injection of funds to rebuild it, and then we would recoup the money by moving people who are in need of housing into the facilities, but deduct the rent against the amount of money that was invested into the rebuilding of the project. So this is something that we're working on. If there are people in the community that would be interested in such, feel free to contact the Ministry of VSA. Of course, we're working on financial aid. We have seen an increase in people coming looking for financial help. We do have a shorter program, in other words, a 6-month program versus a 1-year program, so that we try and expedite the approval process, understanding that there's those in the community in need. And of course, I'm looking forward to discussions with the Minister of Romy about a more strategic way forward in terms of our home repair project and emergency housing, and we should have those conversations in the next few days. I thank you very much.
Thank you for those introductory remarks. I'd now like to welcome to the lectern Minister of Finance, the Honorable Michael Ferrier.
Thank you, Rodney. Good morning, everyone. Members of the press, colleague ministers, support staff, and most importantly, people of St. Martin. This is our interim government's First press briefing, and I ask your indulgence to fully and clearly express myself. I'm usually a person who speaks his mind, and on this occasion I'm going to try to stay true to that principle. I'd like to first of all thank my predecessor, Minister Gibson, for his efforts on behalf of the island, and I look forward to Mr. Lee's list of things to be reviewed. I'm both humbled and honored to have been asked to serve as a member of the Council of Ministers. Ironically, this is an interim function which I expect will be as intense as it will be brief. To put it bluntly, there is a lot to do and very little time to do it in. I will not stand here and promise the moon and the stars. The time that I will serve in government is too short. I'm not running for office in the next elections, but I have chosen to serve this interim government because I believe I can make a contribution to the post-Irma recovery process. After the election, St. Martin voters will have elected the people they feel can complete this process. Note that while this interim government will not be able to solve every problem facing us, we will start the ball rolling in terms of the reconstruction and recovery of this country. Let's have a reality check. The people of St. Martin are hurting. The roofs of many homes are still missing or damaged. Some homes have crumbled under the pounding of Hurricane Irma. The economy is in a vulnerable state. Our airport is still a disaster zone, and our hotels and resorts are mostly destroyed. Many businesses remain closed, and too many people are jobless or face loss of income in the coming months. We must also deal with the added pressure of the next hurricane season, which starts in less than 6 months. In plain language, St. Martin is in a deep hole, and the climb out is steep. We cannot solve this problem alone. Thankfully, there is a reconstruction fund. An amount of 550 million euro has been made available by the Dutch government. But while a part of this fund has been earmarked for liquidity support, and a few million have already been committed for immediate aid, the bulk of the funds remains uncommitted. It's been over 4 months since the disaster struck, and only this week the process for setting priorities regarding the recovery has really begun. We need to get the committed Dutch funds into projects that will benefit the people, and we need to do it sooner than later. People want, need, and deserve help to get their lives back. This is only one thing I know. There's one thing I know about St. Martin, and that is St. Martin is resilient, and this resilience is driven by the spirit of our people. I also know that the St. Martin people are ready for recovery. We must get it done. The World Bank has been commissioned by the Dutch to manage the fund. According to the Dutch reconstruction representative, St. Martin is in the driver's seat, and I want to take them at their word for that. We must be in the driver's seat. St. Martin is a place that we know best, and we should know what to do with the funds that we need to fix it. Here is what I believe the government should do. The primary objective in the first month must be to quickly and professionally establish a Reconstruction Project Bureau. This bureau will help draft a program of priorities, including a clear vision statement for recovery of St. Martin. The priorities of this reconstruction must be listed and explained. With this approach, we can come together with the World Bank and the Dutch representatives, use input from stakeholders, and speed up the revival of the economy of the island, which in turn will continue to drive the economy. But most importantly, we need to clearly state what we intend to and how we plan to do it. Priorities must balance the social needs with the economic realities. Historically, the success of St. Martin has been the productive capacity of the island's residents and businesses. The situation after Hurricane Irma's destruction, including the despicable acts of vandalism and looting, is unprecedented. Never before has the damage of a hurricane been so catastrophic to our physical structures across every sector of the community and the economy. Both business and labor have been impacted. Reconstruction priorities must therefore provide social support to our people and at the same time stimulate the economic engine of this island. I am prepared to work with my colleagues in government, the civil servants, professionals in the public and private sectors, representatives of the World Bank and the Dutch to develop the program of priorities by February 15th. St. Martin simply cannot wait any longer for action. Again, we must set priorities and discuss how we're going to go about them. Together, we need to work on getting the reconstruction funds channeled into projects that will help us get back on our feet as soon as possible. As for my portfolio as Minister of Finance, let me say this. I'm aware of the fact that there will be a lot to deal with. We inherit the reality of a possible instruction from the Dutch government because there is no budget approved for fiscal year 2018. The CFT issued a negative advice at the end of 2017. Politically, we may not agree with this advice because we feel there should be consideration for the catastrophe caused by Irma. Nevertheless, this ministry has to deal with the advice, and that is exactly what we have started to do. We face a precarious financial situation. Besides the lack of a budget for 2018, we must deal with a deficit on our 2017 budget of over 150 million guilders. Complicating matters is the anticipated deficit for fiscal year 2018, which is estimated to an amount of 250 million guilders. Ways and means have to be found to reduce the deficit so that in future, St. Martin will not be drowning in debt and burdened by financial problems that will make the growth and development difficult, if not impossible. The work towards finding these solutions has started. The budget 2018 will be drawn up. I seek the support of the ministers and the civil service to keep the deficit down, improve the financial management, reduce waste, and improve efficiency. To that end, all decisions for spending of the last 90 days will be reviewed, and government departments will need to provide insight and substantiation for current spending and investments. I fully expect that the Council of Ministers will uncover many more challenges. So yes, the time is short and the hurdles ahead are daunting. To me, that means that all of us as incoming ministers have to carefully pick our battles and do the things that will provide the most benefit for St. Martin on the short term and long term. As difficult as I know this will be, we must focus on the forest and not get blinded by all the trees. This interim government council of ministers has committed to work as a team. I certainly will do my part. The clock is ticking. People want action. I look forward to cooperation, a positive can-do attitude, and support from all. May God bless you, and may God bless St. Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Ferrier. I'd now like to welcome to the lectern Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Urin Boyte.
Thank you. Prime Minister, fellow ministers of the Council, members of the media, good morning. And indeed, let me begin by expressing my appreciation to the Prime Minister and my fellow Council ministers for the opportunity to work with such a vibrant and enthused set of individuals whose only motive is to see the people of St. Martin through the recovery phase that we are currently in. Hurricane Irma, as has been expressed earlier already, has undoubtedly changed not only the physical landscape of our island, it has changed the economic, financial, and psychosocial landscape as well. As Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, besides lending my support and focus to the agreements of the Governing Accord for the Romeo Marlin Cabinet, in these coming weeks and months, my priorities will also be on the early and midterm recovery of our nation and the areas that pertain to my ministry in particular. This morning, I received an interesting message through, of course, WhatsApp, and the highlights and the special news of cultural expressions is very dear to me. And the message which reads, "Put your heart, mind, and soul into even your smallest acts," as this is the secret of success, I think should be recognized by everybody that made a vital contribution over the last couple of months. Of course, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport has indeed already undertaken many initiatives, small and big, and completed enormous tasks with entire sectors, such as the school boards, sport organizations, representatives and organizations for the arts, and youth organizations, including daycare centers. And I therefore would also like to express my sincere thank you and gratitude to former Minister Siveria Jacobs for her proactive initiatives in the emergency phase after Irma. We recognize leadership and support to reopen the schools in October, to ensure that our community was able indeed, as also expressed by my colleagues, to stabilize and to indeed create some sense of normalcy in our family lives. I am happy to announce the Ministry's contribution to our need to complete our own Sint Maarten National Recovery Plan. And I would like to emphasize our own National Recovery Plan, and to ensure that we stay stable in the negotiations of the World Bank. The preparations to a Ministry Resilience Plan titled MRP Education Comes First is a comprehensive approach to working toward the objectives of establishing a foundation for a sustainable recovery and to also improve disaster responsiveness before, during, and after disasters in the education, culture, youth, and sports sector. As your new minister, I believe in the principles of open government, and I join and I'm happy to be amongst this group of ministers. I indeed support, sometimes maybe radical transparency, to regain trust amongst our people, our constituents. It's so dearly needed, especially during these times of post-Irma. Of course, you, the press, and the entire community expects us to be able to hit the ground running from day one and to make a difference. In line of this belief, in participation and partnerships, I can say that my cabinet and I immediately participated in the second series of consultation sessions that were scheduled this week on Monday. And these sessions were with key stakeholders of my ministry, and we agreed indeed that it is imperative that we accelerate on the vital issues related to reconstruction of schools, sport and cultural facilities. While we may feel a sense of satisfaction after indeed the enormous and huge efforts made in the first 4 months, if we drive around, we still see, of course, the impact in our schools, in our sports facilities, of our monuments, and we have to be very careful not to forget that we have to push forward once more. Projects therefore need to be developed immediately to ensure that the opportunity of funding to the World Bank, as mentioned also by Minister Verrier, can be considered, and I urge therefore the stakeholders to partner with my ministry and focus on being efficient and effective in the planning and executing of these vital projects. They cannot wait. While we may consider this ministry to be soft and part of social affairs, I dare to emphasize the critical nature of education, culture, youth and sport, and the younger generations as critical in a healthy and strong economic and productive recovery. Projects are expected to be prepared as soon as possible, as the matters and preparation of the National Recovery Plan will have to be concluded in actionable items with projected financial consequences. And that has to happen indeed for and during this interim period as soon as possible. Critical stakeholders will therefore receive an invitation from my cabinet this week to discuss the vision and the critical goals that we need to meet and to ensure that the projects are indeed submitted and fit in the overall vision and profile of a strong reconstruction and rebuilding effort. While various matters have been prioritized by the Ministry through the MRP plan, we also recognize our day-to-day responsibilities, such as deadlines and preparations made for study financing. And everybody probably is aware that the deadline to submit study financing request was Monday last for the new academic year of 2018-2019. As Minister, I will prioritize and focus on critical areas such as, indeed, the psychosocial well-being of not only our students, but also the teachers and the entire education, culture, youth and sports staff, such as sport coaches. I'm sure that everybody, families, mothers, fathers, would like to entrust their children with, indeed, coaches, teachers that are well-grounded and are able to support them as much as they can. In addition to that, I would like to emphasize the importance of safety and preparedness of our education, culture, youth and sports facilities. It can be any time that we can be hit with a disaster. And we have been sensitized with matters related to tsunami warnings. We have been sensitized with matters related to earthquakes. And that has a different level of preparedness than a hurricane, for which you can prepare, of course, 3-4 days in advance. If your children are in schools and sports facilities, I'm sure that everybody wants to make sure that their children are fine and trusted with people that are well prepared. And therefore, this ministry will take, indeed, the upcoming season of a hurricane very seriously and ensure that disaster planning will advance and will improve, and that training to ensure that drills can indeed be prepared will happen. Of course, matters related to reconstruction and the possible rezoning of critical facilities such as the library, CMARC, the museum, CBA schools, Sundial have my urgent attention, and I've been approached by various partners already to see how that can best be addressed to indeed secure rezoning in the interest of to avoid, of course, critical concerns that have been expressed over the last couple of years of congestion and traffic issues. We will take that along, because as we emphasized, we would like to build back better. And we have opportunity, so to speak, in adversity. Yeah? And that's what we will, and therefore, will seek out and what I will contribute to. While we have a tendency, indeed, to focus on schools, and they are, of course, a high priority, this ministry is also responsible for sport and cultural facilities. We've seen wonderful progress and great contributions to, for instance, programs such as Art Heals, and we also have to recognize that sport and recreational programs help communities that are in troubled phases, such as we are. And I would like to therefore encourage everybody in those, that work in those areas, such as artists, sport coaches, sport organizations, to not consider yourself to be not important. You are vital, and I would like to therefore welcome you and invite you to indeed propose projects that will help. The priorities, of course, can come across as monumental. Time is short, and these tasks are indeed ambitious. On this journey, I have an amazing cabinet staff that has come alongside me to help shoulder the responsibility of making the priorities mentioned above come to pass. Suena Laville Martis joins the cabinet as policy advisor after an extensive period within the ministry's inspectorate and also within the personnel department. Beverly May Nisbet, the cabinet's policy officer, is a former teacher and past director of the Nature Foundation and has a heart for culture and education. Hendrikus Ekkema has a comprehensive background and education in facility management, and his expertise will definitely be focused primarily on ensuring our schools, cultural and sporting facilities get the vital attention they need in this critical reconstruction phase. Giselle York, known to the media, is a specialist in communication field tasked with the role of public relations officer and ensuring that both internal and external communication in this ministry will be indeed at its peak. Mishnella Eugenio, whom I have had the pleasure of working with for the last 18 months within the ministry in my former capacity of Secretary General, will be my secretary. I could not imagine making this transition without her, and Mishnella will be the Cabinet's executive secretary, ensuring that our Cabinet's administrative needs are executed in an expert and also client-friendly manner. Of course, I look forward to working with the dedicated staff of the entire ministry. I have had the pleasure to serve as Secretary General for the past 3 years. We have toiled together, celebrated victories, and I have learned and grown from our challenges. And now, as your minister, I pledge to continue to champion the initiative we have worked on so tirelessly. To the media, I look forward to building a strong relationship between the ministry and yourselves. Your responsibility within our society is an important one, as fair and balanced reporting is, in my opinion, the cornerstone of your profession. And we've emphasized the importance of an informed community, an open government, and I recognize therefore your role in making that happen. A strong and active partnership is a must, and I commit to you that the door through our public relations officer will always be open for further understanding and explanation of the things that we will undertake. To the people of St. Maarten, I'm very humbled at the overwhelming responsibility of being your Minister of Culture, Education, Youth and Sport. I pledge to work diligently on your behalf, and I thank you for your support. May God bless St. Maarten, and I look forward for the partnership of the entire Romeo Marlin cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you for those introductory remarks. And I'd like to welcome to the lectern Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, the Honorable Miklos Gietersen.
Thank you, Rodney. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, listening and viewing audience, good morning. First of all, I want to say that I'm very honored to be standing here before you as the Minister of ROMI. I also want to extend congratulations to my fellow ministers and wish them, and Prime Minister, and wish you guys success in this journey. St. Maarten recently went through one of the biggest catastrophes in its history, and we are destined to bounce back. I came up with a list of priorities that I find are essential in our country bouncing back. To top the list, I want to solve the emergency shelter issue, which is still going on in the festival village. I'm aware that a number of persons are still in the shelters, and we are 5 months away from our next hurricane season. Resolving the living situation of these persons is my top priority as minister. Together with the Ministry of VSA, we will work to ensure that this situation is addressed with all factors impacting these persons taken into consideration. Additionally, our lack of emergency housing became very apparent in the aftermath of the last hurricane season. VROMI is in discussions to have more permanent solutions and will be evaluating the feasibility of implementing at least one or two of these in the meantime or in time for the next hurricane season, which begins in June. Carnival is a must. The St. Maarten people need to rejoice their St. Maarten strong, especially after what we went through last year. And I will see to it, being responsible for this, that the St. Maarten people can have a clean and free festival village in time for Carnival. Second is the roof repair program. Currently, it's still in its initial phase, it's still going on, and homeowners can come to the Ministry of Rummy and request roof repair relief, but with strict conditions. Third, infrastructure repair. We will continue with the 10th EDF planned upgrading of the 80 Illage Road in Lower Princess Quarter, that's Dutch Quarter, and additional road repair and maintenance. Street and traffic lights need to be addressed, and road markings. Potholes, we are very famous for our potholes. The one across Motor World is the most famous one right now. They also need to be fixed in a rush, in speed. Key to these infrastructural changes are the development and installation of connecting sewage pump stations from Foga Estate, which is behind Melford Hazel Sport Hall, including the government building, and Tamarind Estate, where the old Rummy building is located. All of these sewage pumps are to be connected to the sewage plant on 80 Illage Road. Right now, hot in the press is the sewage issue at the Atrium Hotel. I've learned that yesterday representatives from Rummy, the Nature Foundation, and SLS St. Martin Laboratory Services were at the establishment. Tests were done, and indeed the waste and pollution is toxic. Luckily, we've learned from the Nature Foundation that the toxic waste did not enter into our ocean. I will be monitoring this situation to ensure that this problem has a permanent solution. Fourth, I want to prioritize in looking into the legal obligations of Rummy. There are several legal obligations that Rummy holds that needs to be addressed to prevent potential financial penalties in court. As these include ongoing legal cases, I cannot further elaborate, but these have my attention and they're a priority. Waste management is next on my list, and we will continue with the marine salvage in the Simpson Bay Lagoon, the removal of debris from the Great Salt Pond, car wrecks from alongside the roads and certain parking lots. And we'll also continue with the island-wide debris cleanup as we prepare for a more ideal waste management solution. The dump is one of our biggest problems here. It is the biggest problem on St. Martin. I can even say it's the biggest problem in the region of our islands. This gigantic monster is actually, I consider it a giant murderer. I believe the energies that are emitted from this site are toxic and deadly, and our community is inhaling all of this air, these gases, without even knowing what is really going on at that site. This would lead me to my final priority, which is to begin an educational initiative for the general public on the reality of environment and climate change. This will continue to affect us and our neighboring islands for many years to come. This initiative will include knowledge-based exchanges with organizations such as UNESCO and the St. Martin Nature Foundation, as well as initiatives focused on recycling, efficient waste management practices for residents and businesses alike. St. Martin, if we want to start our track onto a victorious country, we need to do this unanimously in unity with each other. It starts at home, where we begin our waste management. It starts with teaching our children what the importance is of keeping our planet green and our country clean. It is not a joke with the devastation that's really going on St. Martin right now. This morning, I also went to GEBE. That was one of my first meetings as minister. And the information that was given was really overwhelming. A lot of information to process. I have to schedule another meeting with GEBE in order to know exactly how we can move forward with the issues that they are handling at the moment. Just for an example, I know that a lot of places are still out of water, not a lot, a few places are still out of water and current after the hurricane. And GEBE explained to us this morning that a lot of issues arise because the public or homeowners, landowners don't want to cooperate because they don't want lampposts erected on their properties. They don't want the ground to be dug so we can have our running cables. And like I said, together it's teamwork that will make the dream work. If we, the St. Martin people, are having issues like this, given GB issues like this, we're not really going to be, we're holding ourselves back. We need to come together as a unit to have our country back on top as a victorious island. Thank you very much for listening, audience members, members of the press, fellow ministers, congratulations again. I'm not really one to talk the talk. I like to walk the walk and have action done. So I will leave it at this. And thank you guys again for listening.
Thank you, Minister Heaterson, for those opening remarks. I'd now like to welcome to the lectern Prime Minister, the Honorable Leona Romeo Marlin.
Good morning once again. It's been a very intense couple of days, but to whom much is given, much is expected, and much is required. I cannot say that as Minister of General Affairs that I am not cognizant of the issues of general affairs, because after all, I've worked as a civil servant within this ministry for many years. This morning, the first order of business is to ensure that the cabinet staff was introduced to the ministries, so we did our tour. It will continue throughout the day. I have recently received the transition report from the Secretary General of General Affairs, Mr. Hensley Plantain. The cabinet is currently reviewing such. I must mention that I am cognizant as well of the complaints that I have read in the newspapers concerning certain services. That will be addressed with the relevant departments. The cabinet, as many of the other ministries, will also be looking at all decisions taken during the demissionary period. It was also indicated by, I believe, the Minister of Finance and the Minister of VSA, but making sure that decisions made within that period is compliant to the law, will not give put St. Martin in any financial problems, and if needed, actions will be taken if necessary. During the governing period, the main priorities within the ministry, as I indicated before in my opening speech, is the implementation of the Integrity Chamber Law and the National Recovery Plan of St. Martin. Our first CALM meeting was held yesterday. It was very, very intense, very long, but much needed because there was so much to talk about. And the main issues on our agenda is the recovery plan and what we did to get an update and to be in line with what exactly is happening at this time. We got a presentation, or we had a presentation from Mr. Hensley Plantain, the Secretary General. We had another with Mr. Nico Scove, the head of the Dutch Civil Commission, Mr. Chris Johnson, the representative of the Netherlands, and Mr. Dennis Richardson, the chair of the Recovery Plan. Yesterday, we also met with the Council of Advice, and previously before that, the Council of Ministers visited the airport as I had to be present on the front side. I've met with the governor. So we have been busy. We have hit the road running, if you want to say those terms. Though our term is limited or short, it does not mean that we cannot be effective. Again, to whom much is given, much is expected and required, and I expect nothing but hard work and good communication, prioritizing, and I must say that I thank you all. In our first meeting, it was very, very effective, and I believe that we're going to do exactly what we say we're going to do, because I am sitting with ministers that I am confident that will execute the priorities given in their ministries. I thank you all, and I look forward for the other meetings. If they were as dynamic as the one that we had yesterday, we're going to do this for the benefit of St. Martin. We have all pledged to work in the best interest of this country. I'm very proud to work with each and every one of you. Let us continue to communicate, prioritize, and execute accordingly for the best interests of this island. Thank you.
We now go over to the question and answer period. If I look at my time, we roughly have about 10 to 12 minutes left before we reach the hour mark. And we will use that time effectively, and we'll begin with first question from Mr. Hilbert Hart.
Okay. Good morning, Prime Minister. According to Articles 7 and 8 of the Kingdom Charter, our government has a minister plenipotentiary. We have, of course, noticed that we don't have that minister at the moment. Are you looking for a candidate for that position at the moment?
That position will be filled shortly.
Good morning. Thank you, Rodney. Good morning, Minister Romeo Marlin and the other ministers. Congratulations on your new post and good luck. My question has to go to Minister of Finance, Mr. Ferrier. It has to do with the 2018 budget. Of course, the law on financial supervision requires a government to ask for a deviation to have a budget that has a deficit. Can you say whether such a letter asking for a deviation from the law has been sent to the Kingdom government? And if so, has there been a response?
No, not yet. We are working on this budget. The budget, in fact, is at the Council of Advice at this moment. The 2018, yes.
Mr. Lyndon Brown.
Good morning. Welcome to all the new ministers. I can hear hope. But question to Minister Gittins.
Minister Gitterson.
Gitterson. Okay. The people of St. Martin are hurting. Over the past days, there have been some ongoing disturbance with government land, domain land. We are speaking about recovery. I believe the people of St. Martin want to be mentally fit first. They need energy to be a part of the recovery
Mr.
plan.
Brown, can you get to your question for
Yeah, I'm getting there. A sick nation would not have the energy to perform. So I would like you to look into this area with the domain land. Who are the beneficiaries of domain land? Because people just aggressive to get piece of St. Martin land.
I understand in this time that we should not be focused on giving out land and those type of matters, because yes, we have a lot of houses that still need roofs. We still, I mean, like the Vromy building, for instance, that needs to be gone. It's an eyesore. I mean, there are priorities, and I know the outgoing minister, he had his own priorities, but now I will be focusing on mine and giving out land. honestly is not a priority in the rebuilding of our nation right now.
We now go over to the second round. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Minister Gitterson, good morning. Your predecessor, Minister Emmanuel, a couple of weeks ago was parading here a memorandum of understanding with a company called EnviroGreen. I don't know if you're familiar with the content of that agreement,
No,
and if
I'm
that is
not.
a basis for your solution for the dump.
Well, no, I'm not familiar with those documents. I haven't seen anything about EnviroGreen up until now. This is my third day as minister, but it is something that I will be looking into, because the dump, like I said, for me, that's my #1 priority. But I know the people of St. Martin are really hurting. We have people in the festival village as sheltering, and the roofs that needs to be repaired. So I know for St. Martin, that's #1. But for me, to get the dump gone, that's my #1 priority. And I will be looking into the EnviroGreen and all other proposals to fix that problem. Yes, definitely.
Alida.
Thank you again, Rodney. Minister Lee, you mentioned in your presentation that there are a number of decisions that you don't feel comfortable with that was made by the previous cabinet. Can you give some examples of those decisions at this point in time, and perhaps say why it is you're not comfortable with them?
I have to be very cautious, because the conversations within Council of Ministers is confidential, and I think I'm not even sure legally how it would work. I think until the Council of Ministers perhaps makes a decision to make some topics public. But I think in general, I could speak to, for example, costs. And I've mentioned this. As ministers, we're managers. We're responsible for spending the people's money effectively, wisely, judiciously. So if, for example, invoices for services come in, and those invoices are not well substantiated and don't leave any possibilities to be checked for their validity, it opens the possibility for heavily inflated prices. It leads to many other consequences. So it means the country basically could be spending too much money. Where's that money going? What's that money really, what's happening with it? I think for example, some of the selection processes, so let's say if government is contracting services, how that process was done. Was there favoritism in the way it was executed? Was the best service provider for the best price actually chosen, or was it given to somebody who may be politically correctly aligned versus, what's best interest for the country? I've seen, for example, terms of references that are much too vague. So that leaves government without the ability to manage those contracts. So in other words, if I give you a contract to execute a task, and that contract or those terms of references are very vague, if you don't perform correctly, I have no basis to penalize you or to terminate your contract because the contract was poorly defined. So in general, those are the kinds of discussion points. And there's some question marks, for example, whether decisions were even taken legally correct. So for the moment, that's the best I could do, Alida. You're welcome.
We now have our final question for Mr. Brown.
Minister Peterson, I got it right now. With the dump, you said that's your first priority.
Personally, but I know as I have the responsibility to represent the Ministry of Romy, that I should put country above self. And helping the St. Martin people is number one right now.
Right. There was an impending conflict with GEB.
Correct.
The former Minister of Romy said there was some signing that 2% did not sign up to this day. You said that you had some meeting with GEB.
Correct.
I want to think if the meeting is wrong, these matter to get a project in gear.
Yes.
And is any hope that you will want to let the people of St. Martin know
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
If there's any hope.
about the dump?
Oh,
How
about the dump.
soon?
Yeah, like I said, this morning I met with GB for the first time, and it was a lot of information that we got in that little 60 minutes to process. So I definitely have to reschedule another meeting to iron out and learn all of the details, exactly what's going on. Sorry?
Is there any hope?
Yes, there is hope. Yes.